Welcome to Cafe Racer Garage, I'm Dan and I'm currently halfway through building this Honda CB750 into a Cafe Racer. I've done a front end swap, I've done a tank swap, and now I just need to build an electrics tray to hide all of the ugly electrics. But rather than do it the conventional way that I've always done, I've got something really cool to show you, so let's get into it. In my endeavour to share the process of building more epic bikes and parts for them, I now have these two awesome machines from Hare & Forbes. One is a Hypertherm 45XP PowerMax plasma cutter, and the other is the ArcDroid CNC robot. And I also have this tool cabinet from Hare & Forbes, which will now become my plasma cutting station. But first up, I need to build a wet bed cutting table, which I'll be making from a sheet of 3mm aluminium. And for anyone who doesn't know, having a wet bed has a few advantages, and the first one is just keeping the parts cool when you're cutting them so they don't warp, especially on the thinner materials, as well as it keeps the sparks and smoke down. And I couldn't have been happier with that fit. So I've gone ahead and put all the metal slats in. As you can see, I still need to make a mounting for the front bolts. I've done the rear, and I've also made a bracket here, which I'll show you what that's for in a second. And a few other things that I need to do is make some sort of bung so I can let the water out and flush the water from time to time, and make a bracket so I can actually mount it to the table. I have the Hypertherm 45XP just down here inside the cabinet. I still need to get a plug so I can plug that in and get that going. And this little bracket here is to put a monitor mount so I can have the LCD display at a good height as well as away from the sparks when I'm using it. I would most definitely be using the ArcDroid right now to cut this part out, but unfortunately that has a heavy duty plug and the hardware store doesn't have it, and it's a Sunday, so I'm just going to have to do it manually. It's finally Monday, I have the plug installed, and I've also taken the cabinet doors off this to install the plasma cutter inside here. And it's just a simple little swing out shelf, so this machine will get the ventilation it needs when it's being used. After dialing the machine in, I went ahead and made my first cuts, which was making an electrics tray for a CB750. I've since improved on this design, which I'll show you in a minute. Just a quick introduction to how this guy works. I'm using the Hypertherm PowerMax 45XP plasma cutter with a machine torch, but the ArcDroid can work with a vast range of plasma cutters. So this system is super simple to use for someone who's never done any CNC work before. If you want to trace something, I'll show you that in a second. Say for instance a cardboard template that you want to cut into steel. Or you could simply just use the parameters that they have here, a sequence of holes or a square or a circle. Let's select circle for example, and let's change the diameter to say 50mm. Done. And you are pretty much ready to go. And that'll then cut that circle out perfectly every single time. It's always a good idea to do a test run before you fire up the plasma cutter. That's just 0.95 cold rolled steel. Let's try some aluminium. And the second way you can use this machine is if you have an existing part or if you have a cardboard template. For my example, I'm going to be cutting something out of cardboard that I've got a drawing of that I want to make. It's just simply making the cardboard template, and then you can cut it from steel by tracing it. And when it comes to making templates, I recommend getting this stuff here. It's called box board, or also known as straw board. It's a little bit more expensive. It's probably like $3 a sheet, but you get a nice crisp line when you cut it with a pair of scissors or knife, and so therefore you get a more accurate finish. To simply trace something that you want to cut out of steel, all you have to do is change out the torch with a stylus and then just trace around the outside. It'll show up on the screen, and then you can just make your adjustments from there. So now that I've showed you how to trace and cut something out pretty cool like this, I actually need to make myself a part. It's a CB750 Electrics tray. I've gone ahead and made a template, but I've taken the measurements off this and put it into a CAD program and designed it so that I can transfer it straight onto this ArcDroid through a USB stick. So this ArcDroid accepts DXF files straight from a CAD program, which I've already done. Now it's just a matter of cutting it out. So I'm only cutting relatively thin material with this for now, just to get used to the machine, because I've only had it for a few days, but I'm pretty sure this PowerMax 45 can cut up to about 16mm mild steel. Probably a lot more than I'll ever need, but it's there if I need it. Most of the stuff that I'll do will probably be around 3mm to maybe 10mm thick for making brackets and stuff for motorcycles. With each part that you cut, you end up with a bit of dross on the side, which is similar to, I guess, welding slag. It can come off quite easily, but it all changes depending on the speed as well as the heat that you put into the part. If you only have a small amount to remove, you could easily use one of these chisels. Alternatively, flap a disc on a grinder, or I think this would be even better, just using a wire brush on a grinder. Is it just me, or is that starting to look a little bit like a Cybertruck? Now to make the brackets to mount the Electrics tray. The more accurate you can be with the tracing, the better the part turns out, and that's why I use a better quality cardboard. So that's now with both brackets welded on. Let's fit it up and see what it looks like. Even though that's quite an unusual shape off the bike, once it's on, it actually looks really cool. So I'm just using some really long bolts here to hold it up. However, you could quite easily install riv nuts into this top bracket and then screw the bolts straight into that. If you want to amp it up even more, you could cut this whole section out and put a brace across here, and that would allow you a lot more access inside that Electrics tray. I seriously could not have been happier with that design. I think it just works perfectly with the frame of the bike, just lining up with all the angles. This thing is an absolute animal of a machine. I'm so stoked. I've got a ton of projects lined up for it, so expect to see it in a lot more of my content. And if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you go and check out one of these two.